Hey guys, it's Pastor Scott, and tonight's story is called "The Carnival Daughter," and so I'm showing you a picture, and I'm tired tonight, so what a perfect place to prepare for bedtime stories, kingdom stories with Pastor Scott. Reading to you here, "The Kingdom Daughter." The Carnival Daughter. If the enchanter looked into a child's eyes, his gaze could burn a scar on the soul. Some children became ill and malformed at his evil glance and were outcast from Enchanted City. These were the lucky ones. Others went away forever into a country that was only in their minds. Carney lived in a huge mansion on the edge of the mountain that rose behind Enchanted City. Mr. Hill lifted its grand peak to the sky and proudly displayed a vast array of large estates and palatial homes. The child's father was a wealthy merchant who traveled far to purchase costly goods for sale in the city bazaar. Carney had everything a girl could want. She never went hungry or shivered in the cold. Her father was rich enough to hire servants. Her mother was beautiful and kind. She had no brothers or sisters demanding to share her toys. But something was wrong. Something was so wrong with Carney that her mother wept quietly in the day when everyone else was sleeping. Her father walked around with a worried frown creasing a deep line between his eyes. The servants huddled in groups discussing the girl's sorry condition. Carney stayed in her room. She refused to look out her window at the lovely starry nights. The shutters were locked, the blinds were shut, and the heavy winter tapestries were always drawn. The only person allowed in the rooms were Nurse, who left carrying silver trays of half-eaten food, and Carney's mother, who stayed only for short visits, but never her father. He unfortunately reminded his daughter of the enchanter. All the old-time servants remembered that the girl had once been a happy, beautiful little pixie with sparkling brown eyes and lustrous, curly black hair. Her cheeks dimpled when she smiled, and she was always smiling, dancing about, full of embraces for everyone. She was a love, they'd whisper to one another, their starched headpieces bobbing in the tight circle. Such a love, so sad. But 5 terrible years ago it had happened. The Enchanter's Ball, held yearly at a mansion of the wizard's own choosing, took place that year at the marble and cedar palace of Carney's father. The house had been filled with fire priests, and the evil enchanter's minions stood guard around all the travelers who laughed and danced and acted as though they were having a good time. Although some admired, it was hard to have fun on command. That night Carney had been safely tucked in bed. Mothers hid their children out of sight when the enchanter was nearby, nor because the enchanters didn't like children. No. The problem was he liked them too much and in all the wrong ways. Orphans, of course, belonged to the enchanter. They became his forced labor to do the dirty work of Enchanted City. But children of the wealthy were not beyond his conscription. Many a beautiful child had been drafted to serve as a pampered attendant in the Dagoda. Few parents considered this a privilege. Downstairs the music played. Bells sewn to the hems of fire priests' robes jangled. Laughter and merriment called the little child from her deep sleep. She crept from bed and tiptoed to the circular railing that guarded the bedroom corridor from the vast space that arched to the great ceiling above and to the grand ballroom below. She would find her mother, she thought, thumb in her mouth. Dressed in snug pajamas, she descended the stairs step by step, her hand gripping the banister. No one noticed her, not the laughing adults, nor the servants hurrying with trays of drinks and aperitifs. But her little eyes caught sight of the tallest man in the hall. She stopped, 1 foot in midair, and stared. He was wearing the most beautiful robe. It flashed as he turned and shimmered as he swayed. His amber hair was brilliant and soft. It was the enchanter, at his most attractive, in rare party form. Suddenly he turned where he was standing as though he felt her eyes on him. The man fixed his look on her, capturing her eyes with his own. It was too late to look away. Too late. Too late. She was a beautiful child. He waved his hands in the air, casting an enchantment. Sparks flew from his fingertips, and though the music played on, everyone in the room stood stone still. The man left the party and walked across the room to the grand staircase and the child. He climbed each step slowly, one at a time, his gaze burning with intensity. Mesmerized as she was, child though she was, she sensed danger. She backed up a stair, her thumb still in her mouth. His look was hot, and she was afraid. He looked at her a long time, and she felt his stare pierce to her very soul. "Mama!" she finally cried, and the spell was broken. People finished their laugh that they had been interrupted with, and thought in mid-sentence in the incomplete dance step. Though the music played and the room was suddenly filled with merriment again, her beautiful mother came running, her long silken dress rustling. She lifted her daughter in her arms. "What are you doing out of bed?" The enchanter spoke. "You have a very lovely daughter, child, here." Carney could feel her mother shiver. Carney was taken back to her room and tucked into her feather-quilted bed. But when she woke in the morning, she couldn't bear for anyone to look at her or to look into her eyes. So the curtains were drawn, because she was afraid someone was peering in at her, and the doctors her father called frightened her more. And when they looked at her, she slipped far away from them, far away through a small door to a place where she could hide and where no one could find her. She slipped into a roller coaster car and rode it swooping up and down, away from the eyes, up, far, far up, slowly, slowly, and then a rush, and then a running ride, then a whooshing down, down, down into the carnival land she went. And when her mother came calling her name, "Carney," she had gone far, far away, into the tilting boxes of the Ferris wheel, up and around and high, staying high at the apex, slowly, then faster, then slower. Looking down, she could see her mother, her beautiful mother, far down. She could see her mother's tears swell and drop, becoming frozen crystals which grew to large cubes of ice, catching shafts of light, shards of hard brilliance, sparkling, glittering, then exploding in fireworks. Bashoosh! Bashua! Nurse always crept quietly in the shadows of the hushed, closed room. Casting down her eyes, she held the girl until the carnival music had quieted, and the vendors had stopped calling, "This way, this way! Get your tickets, bah!" Nurse held her until the carnival girl had stopped hiding in the noisy clamor that was her own mind. Her father came once, and his look of concern sent the child farther into Carnival Land than she had ever been. He paced outside her door, and the servants whispered and held their starched aprons to their faces. They could all hear the child screaming in terror as she swooped high on the roller coaster and then rushed down, only to climb slowly up again and again. The Ferris wheel going around and around, the roller coaster going up and down, down and around, the carousel going around and around, the organ music grinding. Boom, ba-da-da, boom, ba-da-da, boom, ba-da-da, boom. Everyone missed the lovely little girl who had danced and laughed and loved. Everyone was glad when the girl had quiet days and seemed more like her old self, and everyone dreaded the moments when a thoughtless look or even an imagined glance would send the child on the carnival rides that went on and on and on and never closed down and never moved, no, to the next town. "Don't look! Don't look at me! Don't!" Carney would scream when no one was even in her room and when all the drapes were tightly closed, and when Nurse would rush to check, she knew by the faraway look in the child's face that the music had begun again, and that from the distant height of the inward Ferris wheel She herself was only a tiny speck on the ground, and her own cry, "Come back! Don't go away!" could scarcely be heard. For 5 years Carney went away in her mind, afraid that he would come and sear her again with a glance. Any look of love only of casual interest reminded her of that night when he had captured her with his burning eyes. "Don't look! Don't look!" she would cry and go away. Every time she returned she was thinner, more worn, as though the journey was too difficult for a child to make by herself. All who loved suffered, but most of all her father, who mourned deeply his exile from his own daughter in his own house. One midday he was awakened by her mother's whisper, "Can you help her?" Carney kept her eyes closed. Not another doctor. They were all enchanters' men who sent her far away. If she just didn't look, if she just wouldn't remember. A man's voice answered quietly, "Yes, I can help her." Not another, she thought. Fear knotted its fist in her chest. She moaned and began scrambling toward the keyhole entrance in her mind to escape. "She's awake," said her mother. "She's going. Carney, don't go, don't go. Someone is here who can help you." In a hurry, Carney found the little door that opened from here to there. But before she slipped through, she heard the man say, "Don't worry, I'll go with her." Then the carnival music hid the sounds. Carnival fireworks exploded. Carney Barker shouted, "Peanuts, popcorn, cotton candy." The merry-go-round, thought Carney. No one can find me. The merry-go-round goes round, and the painted horses go up and down. I can run and hide and stay from them forever and ever. Round and up and down and down. Peanuts, popcorn, get your tickets, yeah. Round and up and down and down. The farther she rode, the more Carney thought she heard someone calling her name. She rode and rode on the painted pony until she was out of breath. It was a man's voice. If she could only drown it out with the carnival music. Boom ba da ba, boom ba da da, boom ba da da ba. But she still heard him calling, "Carney! Carney!" The enchanter. She knew that his evil eye had spoken when she was just a little girl sucking her thumb and cuddled in warm pajamas. "You are mine, all mine." She had always known that one day when she was grown, the fire wizard would come to get her. With one look he would capture her eyes and she would be helpless but to follow. This time she would stay here in Carnival Land and ride the carousel, round and up and down and forever and ever and ever. "Carney! Carney!" With a sigh, Carney gave up. She dismounted the painted pony she had been riding. It was no use. He was here, the enchanter. She might as well look into his hot eyes. How could she resist one who could follow her through the secret keyhole into the boom-ba-da-bop madness? Round and up and down. With a sob, the girl looked toward the place from where his call had come. Yes, a man was standing in the middle of the carousel, under the arch of the turning roof. She could go round and round forever, but he would always be in the center of her turning. "Carney!" he called again. "Don't be afraid!" Carney lifted her eyes to see, not the enchanter, but a most beautiful young man. She cast her eyes quickly down again. "Carney, look up!" Something in the young man's tone banished her fear. She lifted her eyes and for the first time in years looked full into a face. The wound within, which had ached and throbbed with pain, began to ease. He reached his hand to her, and in a moment, in a wonder, she lifted hers across the painted ponies to his. At his touch, the merry-go-round music began to slow. The blasting of the fireworks began to stop, and the carnival music grew silent. Boom, ba-da-da, boom, ba-da-da, boom, ba. She was in her room. When she came to herself with her mother's shocked face close, Nurse suddenly drew the draperies open, lifted the blinds, threw open the shutters. Light, glorious light, flooded the once dark place. She was still in her bed. The eiderdown was rumpled and moist with sweat. She was still holding the young man's hand. She was still looking into his own eyes, but He was smiling the gentlest of smiles, and his look was full of a love that could capture you, but only if you wanted it to. Oh, Mother, I've been so far away. Her mother was crying now, but her tears were ordinary tears that glistened on her cheeks and fell on the pillow where Carney's head rested. Then she remembered. It had been years. Where's my father? She asked. It's been so long since I've seen my father. Carney's mother looked up at the young man, questioning. He nodded his head, and Nurse rushed from the room to wake Carney's father from his fitful sleep. How can we ever thank you? Said Carney's mother. Carney thought she was so beautiful, with her eyes moist and shining. The young man smiled again, bent, and kissed the palm of Carney's hand, which he then placed beneath the coverlet. Become a part of the resistance that is working for the restoration of my kingdom, he answered. Throw all your resources into it, but only if you think it's a cause worth living and dying for. At that moment, Carney's father rushed into the room. He knelt by her bed and looked into her eyes, and the two of them embraced each other and wept aloud. Through her tears, she could see the young man shaking her mother's hand and accepting Nurse's grateful hug. Then the man moved through the doorway, where the bevy of sleepy but curious servants were crowding and peering into her room. Don't go away, she thought. I want to look into your eyes one more time. But she remained silent, because she knew that one who could enter into the middle of madness in order to lead her safely out would always be at the center of her life. No matter how far she journeyed, she knew she would never again be out of the loving circle of his gaze. This is the story from Tales of the Resistance by David and Karen Maines. I'm Pastor Scott of Washington Alliance Church. I'm glad you've been with us tonight. I hope you know the gaze of the One. I hope you know that when He's at the center of your life, there's no storm, no pandemic, no chaos that can't be quieted. He's that kind of one. God bless you. Keep you.